We're having slight technical difficulties. Test, test, test. Is this thing live? Sorry. Super, super sorry about that. Hello, boys and girls, and others, and I'm happy to see you. Well, not see you, but you get my point. Let me. Hello. No, I am getting there. So, as you can see, new headset arrived. I hope the audio quality is much better today. Let's see. The IKEA delivery arrived in time, and then Windows decided to install an update, and then recording didn't work anymore, and the usual. I used the time to make this little fish you see here in the top corner as an overlay. I'll explain maybe next week what it will be used for, and let's pick up right where we started last time. So last time, you remember, I started the fast lane screenshot script and ignoring all these warnings which need to be fixed. Scrolling, 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 scrolling. Yeah. So remember last time, the last thing we started was the screenshot script that's supposed to do all the screenshots, and guess what? It worked. We started it at 2:25 on, I believe, Saturday. No, it was Sunday on 2:25, and then it started running. It started building the project and compiling and blah. And then at 2:42, it was done with all the screenshots. So did the iPhone Plus screenshots, the 11 Pro Max screenshots, the 2 iPad Pro screenshot sizes, all went good. And then what it actually does, it opens an HTML page. And as you can see here are the screenshots we did. We have the iPad Pro, the iPad Pro 2nd generation. We have the Pro Max, iPhone 11 Pro Max, and the iPhone 8 Plus. Ignore the rotations. There's currently a bug open against Fastlane /snapshot/Xcode, so it's not us. But as you can see, we never even manually started the simulator for the iPads, and still get the screenshots which have the overlays and the scaling and the positioning. And you can see that this is what we did last time, the correct scaling. And you can see that actually this is scaled a big bit big, but the 11 Pro is very long, and maybe the original layout for the title screen we didn't cater for that, so probably we have to redo the screen, but for now that's good enough. Again, saving a lot of time, and we're nearly there. Remember, we still have this overlay here is part of the debug build, so I don't care about it. I just use the release build for excuse me, the release build for the screenshots, but this is actually game UI and will show up. And I don't want this here. So what can we do about that? And that's the goal for today. As usual, ignore Fastlane wanting an update. We're not doing that today. There's a bug in the latest version, and I don't want to pull in that bug. So let's check. All the screenshots have been modified, and I will not commit them because we'll have new ones anyway. So, and I know that nobody worked on the project, so that's fine. So let's jump into our to-do document, which is also our stream document. So goals last time was wrong keyboard. I did it again. We scaled the overlays and we fixed the aspect ratio, the zoom. So let's put this down here under done. And now we want to fix the render order of the overlays because obviously they're not rendered at the right layer. And basically that is exactly these keyboard shortcuts. This is exactly what we're doing here too. So let's dive right in. So render order. I'm gonna close this here because we don't need this at the moment. So let's use this just to go to the point of the problem, and actually we're going to use a debug build, just a release debug build, and turn on this little hack so we don't care about the script too much. Again, the faster we get to the problem, the faster we can fix it. This is taking a while to start the simulator for the first time now, because obviously the screenshot script had to use that simulator too and kind of wiped it in the process. So this is also a bug in the current simulator, but I think if I update, it will be, let's do the rotated left, right, rotated left, and now it works on the device. It's just a simulator that isn't. And we have the 90% zoom. That's slightly too small. What we're interested in this overlay being here. Actually, let's stop this and scale it to 1.0. So as you see nothing. We see only the text. So it seems like the icons are on the correct layer, but the text is on the front layer, and that's for reasons I'm not going into. We're rendering text last. So let's see. Again, pretending it's a foreign code base, and this is the update code, so nothing being updated there. Let's get into the render code, and we have the base class call. We have some debug code here for scaling to do, and then we render the game, and then we render the overlay manager, which renders the overlays, and then we render use the debug renderer. So this should be fine. But since we're using dynamic batching for the objects, for the triangles, the order in which we call the render doesn't matter at all. It matters in which order we actually send the triangles to the hardware, and also the depth buffer is involved. Sorry, long weekend, long day yesterday, long day today. If I'm a bit unfocused, I apologize for that. So in here, not a lot is going on. I mean, basically we're rendering the overlays, and we looked into this. There's not a lot we can do here. So maybe it's time to go into the renderer a bit deeper. What actually happens if we add a textured quad? Let me start from a different angle. We have the renderer, and that's just basically the abstraction layer, and you see various different platforms, and that is old school here. We used to separate the platform specifics actually by hardware platform, but the newer version abstracts by renderer. So OpenGL, OpenGLES, Vulkan, Metal, maybe even DirectX someday. So let's start at the top. We have a renderer, and basically this renderer has a lot of functionality, but let's start at the initialize. We zero everything out. Again, this should probably move to the header. We initialize the current texture coordinates because we have like a state-based system that says set these texture coordinates, and for all the vertices I send you, just use them. Same for the color. We have some active textures and some active hardware textures. This is actually cheating, but the size seems to be the same. We have texture pointers, we have materials, and we have render effects, and the whole material render effect texture discussion will be quite interesting. So let's go into the materials actually. So what is a material? And I just love how, so here we have the render material, and a material is a combination of textures and effects. Basically, a material is something I can render in one go or in one batch without tweaking anything. So it obviously has a texture, it has the render effect, and various other parameters. And I'm sorry I can't do this today by the looks of it. We go into this deeper and deeper. I'm just trying to do a very high level version of this. So, okay. Let's start from the overlay. Here we say add a textured quad. With the coordinates we calculated, here's the scaling and the shifting we already discussed. So let's just go in there. So it does some magic because we're not giving it the corner, we're giving it the center of the rectangle for good reasons. So we're offsetting here, we're setting the texture coordinates. We have a rotation matrix, so this is just a rotation along the z-axis. Anything else doesn't make that much sense for 2D game. We multiply all the vertices and create the text coordinates and the vertices, and then we just add triangles. So we add the vertices to the renderer. That gives us the vertex index, and then we add the two triangles to the renderer, which basically upper left triangle and then lower right triangle. This angle is awkward. So what does the add vertex do? Okay, here's an early out that says, hey, if there are too many vertices, I just drop them, and this should probably be an assert, but excuse me. Nice, this worked, so you didn't blow your head out. And then it's doing some magic, basically getting the current position in the vertex buffer and putting the position there, X, Y, Z, Z for the depth buffer, the texture coordinates, and the colors, and then just returning the current vertex count, so that the add triangle can use the vertex and just put it in a second buffer. And here it's getting interesting because nothing special here. Some safety checks, some copying, probably too much copying. Again, old version, no need to go into that too deep. And then it's checking, hey, do I have a render material? If I don't have a render material, just say, yeah, whatever. This should probably also be an assert, but let's ignore this. So every vertex or every triangle we send to the renderer will end up in a render material, and that will be the current render material that we're caching the vertices in before we render them later. And so it just, as you can see, it takes the vertex data, copies it twice, and then funny, because yeah, it copies it to the buffer, to the temporary buffer. There was some conversion earlier, that's why that, and then adds the vertex to the actual material. Again, check if it's too big, just plain stupid copy and come back. So basically, now we have the vertex data in the vertex buffer for the render material. So this goes on, and then at some point we end up, so we add stuff to the renderers, and then we end up at the end frame. And let's quickly look at the begin frame. Begin frame just zeroes out everything, clears up everything, and then the end frame does some magic, because right now we copied all the vertices somewhere in memory, but we're not really doing anything with them. So we have various materials now, and somebody has to decide in which order we need to render them. And for that we use the sort key. So basically this is creating an unsorted list of all the materials and is calculating the sort key for these materials. So the material knows, say I have this sort key, and we go into the sort key in a minute. And then it just goes through, it's just this brute force bubble sort. We talk about 5 to 10 materials, so you could optimize here, but no need. Where it basically sorts by, and the sort key is this 32-bit integer, it sorts by the sort key. So it has an indirect lookup table into the correct order of the sort key, and this is just a swap here. Then it just goes over the used render materials, checks the indirect lookup into the sorted order. So this is the position into the lookup table, and this is actually the material that's there. So this is ordered by sort key now. And then it says, hey, material, render yourself. And then does some statistics which are output at the end. So let's go into the material and what the material does, and again ignore this old code, but basically it says if I don't have any vertices, well, bail out. If I don't have a texture, and magic number is not a good idea, but if I don't have a texture, bail out. We cannot render materials without a texture. We don't have to use a texture, but it has to have a texture. And then just vertex arrays, buffer data, enable the position, texture coordinate, and color pointers with the offsets, bind the texture So bind the texture for channel 0 and then bind the texture for channel 1 if we have one. Bind the render effect, and we'll look into the render effect again. And then here's some. We're not sending all the vertices in one batch because I think it was iPhone 4S, up to iPhone 4S vertex batch sizes above 3000 worked, but had a horrible, horrible performance. So just by saying, hey, I give you this chunk of work, and then I give you another chunk of work and another chunk, we managed to make that much faster. So, but this probably has to go, and it returns how many vertices is rendered for statistical reasons. Maybe we should turn on the debug renderer. But again, enough for today. No need to go that deep. Let's look into the sort key thing. Wait a second. So Xcode has a bit of problem with there. Oh. So I want to go to get sort key. Worst case, we just search over the project. Oh, okay. So let's see. Okay, so I should have gone to the calculate sort key. So calculate sort key, a material needs a material can render for various textures, render effects and layers. So it needs that to calculate the matching sort key. As you see, there have been 3 iterations of this. And basically this is the bit layout of the sort key. So the first 2 bits, the 0, 0 here, are reserved for future. It's always good to leave some space. Then the next 2 bits, so, and this is by order of priority, so highest, most left is the one that is most important. So render pass. Maybe we have a post-processing of filtering pass or Z pre-pass in the future, so that's the first thing we order by. Then we have 4 bits for the layer. It's just basically how we layer things, especially in 2D. That's important. Then we have a priority inside the layer. I'm not sure if we're actually using this right now, but basically an object can say, hey, the render effect can say what priority do I have. For example, to get, for example, we have a text layer, and the text wants to render a shadow under itself, but needs a second pass, second call for that. Then it could say, hey, my shadow has a lower priority than my actual rendering. And then we have the render effect ID, and that's just 4-bit. So we can only have 16 render effects. And then this is the texture ID. And I think this is actually the hardware texture ID, so this should be plenty. And then it just does some bit shifting magic to calculate the sort key. So pretty straightforward. So let's go to the renderer. You see this use render effect here? So basically, when we add a vertex, or when we add a triangle, actually, remember it needs to end up in a render material, and it needs to be the correct render material. So somebody has to set this current render material. And obviously is initialized to magic number, undefined, but probably fine. Here's a check where we add the triangle if we have any render material. I don't want. So here's actually somebody setting the. Right. Sorry. Here. The switch render material is actually the one that decides, hey, what is a matching render material? So every time, so when you remember the three keys that the render material could render, the effect, the texture, the effect, the layer. That's exactly, we want to use a texture. We call use texture, and use texture after it did its magic. It says switch render material. It should probably be named switch render material as needed. Same for use render effect. Same for use layer. So basically what the switch render material does, it checks, okay, I'm being, because switching the render material is expensive. So, or could be potentially expensive. So I do some checks. So somebody said switch render material if needed. So do I need to switch? If the current render material is undefined, well, better switch to one that is defined. If it's not undefined as the current render material, can it render this texture with this render effect and this layer? So basically this says, hey, sorry about that. This basically just says, hey, is this my texture? Is this my render effect? Is this my layer? If yes, I can render this thing. So if it cannot render this thing, well, we need to switch. So what do we do if we don't need to switch? There's nothing to do. We just say, hey, we didn't switch. Just go on. We have something that can render. If we do need to switch, and here we do a brute force actually, we try to find a render material that can render, again, same, can render this texture with this render effect and this layer. So just brute force, we could probably just hash this together and then do a lookup, but again, we talk about 5 to 10 materials quick enough. And when profiling shows this is slow, we'll actually look into that. If I didn't find a render material that can render this stuff, then, well, if I found one, then just say, hey, okay, use it. But it might not be there yet. We just started the game, we have never rendered anything, so there's no material there yet. So we create a new material here. We create a new material, initialize it, and this is some old pattern, this initialize shutdown pattern. We would probably use constructor parameters here, but we create the object, we initialize it with the active texture, the active textures per channel, the active hardware textures, the current render effect, the current layer, and then we just add it to the list of render materials. Pretty straightforward. So this is how I can just say, hey, use this layer, use this render effect, and use this texture, and all of these have defaults, and then just render. So let's look into use layer, because obviously render effect is working fine, the batching is working fine, the texture is the correct one, so this is looking fine, but something is fishy with the layer. So let's check. So the background renderer is using a layer, this one here, and I'm not going to search for that because I know it's so the background layer is using the layer ID background, and this is actually where the layer IDs come in. So we render the background, lowest number, lowest priority, quality. Renders first. Then the decorations, which is the layer in front. Then the pickups, the coins, the magnets, the specials. Then we render the fish because we want it to be hidden behind the obstacles. Then we render the obstacles. Don't ask why the debug is rendered in the middle of all that. And there's debug rendering. Oh, that's in-game debug rendering. Then we have the whole UI, all the text and everything. And then we have the debug renderer in front of it. And we'll let me put a note here for the next time. Wrong screen again. For the next time, talk about debug renderer. Because maybe we will do that today, but so which layer are the overlays using? So the background is using the background layer. The app for is rendering the debug renderer here, so it's using the debug layer. The game again it's using the debug layer here because it's resetting here. The game objects is interesting because game objects, all the game objects have a layer, and when they are initialized. So where's the layer? So the layer is initialized to 0, and then where is it? The game objects are subclass. So we have game object type fish. We have pickups. We have players. Again, this is the autocompletion is not working. This is interesting. This is very interesting. I don't want to lose this search here for your benefit, so let's just say this is set correctly when the subclass is initialized. Oh, the hell. So for example, we have the background object. The background object is a decoration, and a decoration is a game object. So the background object, which is funny because it's exactly the place where we started. The background object is actually setting its layer, and if we search for this, so it's here, and the decoration set decoration, and the fish sets the fish. Actually, the game object has an explicit setter. This is a different layer. Then we have obstacles. In the obstacle class, which is a game object, we have pickups. So all these, when they render themselves, or rather when the game object is rendered, because the game object has the render. The background is special because of the effect, that's why it's overriding this. But basically, here is a renderer use layer. So if we circle all the way back for where this started, so what is the overlay manager? Which layer is the overlay manager using to render? Well, there's no set layer here. and there's no set layer here. So it will use whichever layer was active before. And we have no clue what that is. So what we probably should do, and whenever we set the texture, we should really think, what else do we need to set? So you render use layer. Well, let's put it at the same level as the background, just for testing. And I know I probably need to fix the include, so go to the top, include layer IDs. So we're intentionally using the wrong layer here, just to show. Remember, it was all the way in the front, but behind the text. And now it's behind the fish, nothing else going on, but let's start this game real quick. And you see it's behind everything else. Great. So what layer do we want to use? We could put it on the UI layer, but I'd rather say, okay, let's create a new layer ID, overlay, and use that, because I don't want it in the UI layer. It has not. It's always in front of the UI. It's for our marketing shots, and we want it behind the debug renderer. So you have to be careful here because we only have 16 layers, but 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Yeah, we're still good. And now it should be where we expect it to be, where we want it to be. Let's see. So as you see nothing, but the game is running in the background, and can actually see here in the corner that I'm playing. And probably I'm dying because, yeah, nice. So this is correct. So let's go into the Fiiish app again and disable this. And I'm actually gonna do this again to get a cleaner commit. And now let's see if we run the screenshots. Because this is, we want the screenshots. Okay. Thank you. So what was that? Okay, let's run the automated UI test, see if we broke anything. So wait for 5 seconds, do the first screenshot, do continue, add the overlay for the title without the UI text in front of it, do continue, do the overlay again, screenshot, do continue, and I just assume the third overlay will be okay too. So all this unfocused overview of I will go over the rendering thing once more. It's right now I'm still in mode giving you bits and pieces and big pictures, and I fill in a lot of the blanks. So this is a coin screenshot. And the last screenshot. So very, very nice, cause with this works. And when I do this now, so a release build which doesn't have all this debug noise out there. So let's start this, and while we watch this, I go here, done, and I'm not going to do the debug render today, but this screen here, this is so clean. This is a start, which basically says this is our first store screenshot, if you remember. And this is our second store screenshot. And so this is fixed. And actually, I'm quite happy with the timing too. It magically works again. So I wanted to set the background face because I wanted one of the screens to be dark blue and the other screen to be light blue. But as you can see, there is already some variation. And I probably want to postpone that and try to do a test flight upload and try to do a submission. Maybe not a release, but a submission, because I haven't been through the review process with this game for 4 years now, and it's becoming a bit outdated, and I'm not sure. Maybe they reject it because of using deprecated API or so. This ran too. This is nice. And so I want to get fast feedback on that, and then maybe a 2 point. I can update the marketing screenshots without updating the binary. So we did this. So let's do a git status, and actually we modified the we modified the overlay. Well, we use the layer and we add the layer ID. So if I do diff here, all this talking, all this complex, we add a new layer. We have to include it. We use the new layer, which we should probably have done from the start, and we updated the README. And we're ignoring the screenshots. So let's just commit the screenshots with this fixed. Actually, added separate layer for the overlays. Updated debug screen shots. Again, rebase our work. Well, I made a mistake here, but we're gonna pretend that didn't happen. I'll tell you in a minute once the diff of the gigantic screenshots is done. Don't you love this little fishy up here? Could watch it all day long. Maybe I should make a screensaver. It's just a fish swimming and swimming and swimming while I'm talking and talking and talking. So yeah, so I want to push this, so I probably should have fetched before rebasing. Otherwise, I just rebase on my local version of the repository, and whatever happened remote doesn't matter. But nothing should have changed because nobody is currently pushing to that repo. So next Fish stream is planned for Friday, same time. We'll maybe go a bit into the debug renderer, maybe a bit into other stuff. So this is fine too. Let's push this while I talk. If there's anything you want to know, just shoot me a message and I'll look into it. I'll try to improve my setup, and if you could see what I see here, it's like 50 gazillion IKEA boxes that I had to carry in here, so forgive me for being a bit dazzled today. I hope that will get better. I might play a bit of Hearthstone, the new Battlegrounds, before Friday, and if I stop sucking at it, I might even stream some of that, or maybe I should stream it because I suck at it. So the push is through too. We're waiting for the CI system to run. But what I want to do is actually let's have a quick look into the snap file here. Or into the fast file. I'm not an expert in Fastlane or Snapshot. It's all working, and I think 3 years ago Google bought Fastlane and or took over, and so much stuff changed. So we just rerun this, let it run, and see what happens. This will run forever. So last time it was like 30 minutes, so I'm not gonna bore you with that. It's super nice having you here, and even if there are not a lot of live viewers in the stream, I had some feedback from people who watched the stream after, and I'm listening. I'm listening. I hope this here. Sorry, I'm an. This is helping the audio quality, and happy coding. See you soon. Bye.